in terms of like user experience. And sadly, some merchants do this, and I try to stay away from it. Or I advise our customers not to do it, specifically on checkout. And that is putting
Yeah.
something in like CAPTCHA. Sometimes you'll see CAPTCHA or reCAPTCHA
Oh,
on
yeah.
on checkouts, right? And that's kind of like where that UX component, you're trying to lock down your store too much, and it's preventing people from actually checking out.
Welcome to the Bright Commerce Podcast.
Episode 16. Welcome back to Bright Commerce. I'm Carlos with your co-host Judd. How you doing, Judd?
Hey, I'm doing great. How you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing good. Today we're going to dive into a topic that doesn't get a lot of spotlight in e-commerce, but it should, and it is security. And here's the reality. Online fraud costs retailers over 40 billion. That is a scary figure, right? And it wasn't just the big players, it was also the small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
So you can tell like hackers do not discriminate, right? Well, maybe they do discriminate. They look for vulnerabilities or vulnerable websites, right? So in this episode, we're going to cover the current threat landscape and how compliance ties into it, and how customer trust also plays a role, and some easy and practical steps that you should take to essentially protect your store.
I love it. Let's do it. All right. So I think, let's talk about some of the threat landscape that's happening, as you went through. So some of the typical things that I've seen happen with WooCommerce sites that really affect WooCommerce store owners, or even just say Shopify, same thing, is that gateways are now charging fees up to 20 to 50% for each failed transaction. So let's say you have 100 failed transactions in 5 minutes. Well, guess what? That adds up really quick.
Yeah.
Bots are getting so sophisticated that they're rotating IPs and mimicking human behavior patterns to make it even harder for web developers or people, system admins to combat them. So the success rate doesn't matter. It's the volume that kills your margin.
Yeah, I think you're touching on carding attacks, which are very common today, right? And I would say they're more common with the lower tier payment gateways, right? If you run like a top tier payment gateway, and by that I mean something like Stripe or authorize.net, you're not as prone to these attacks. Specifically with Stripe, Stripe has a technology called Radar. So they're essentially always on alert with their entire network. And if they see malicious activity from an IP address, it gets blocked throughout the whole network. And that's pretty genius, man. It's almost like quote unquote crowdsourcing the attack layer, right? Authorize.net does it too, but it's not that sophisticated. It's more of a rule-based approach where you can actually log into your Authorize.net account and you can limit the speed rate of how many transactions you want to allow per second, per minute, and so on, right? The problem there is if you're changing IPs,
Yeah. So
it's the same rule over and over.
we've done things on a WooCommerce site where we limit the amount of orders that can happen by a single user, right? So if we find that someone made more than 3 orders in 5 minutes, we can stop them and block their account for 24 hours or something like that. So there are little ways that you can do it from the website perspective that can help, but what ends up happening is they just use another user.
Right. Or the
Yeah, so there's multiple layers of security, I think, that need to be added to a e-com, or let's just talk about WooCommerce because I'm talking about Shopify is a little bit different because they have their own processing, probably a little bit better in that. But
It's
for
actually Stripe, unless you're going through yeah, unless you're going third party, it's all done through Stripe.
Yeah, but so my question would be, do they have Radar built in, for
Yeah, so
example?
it's a Stripe Connect account at the end of the day.
Okay, so yeah, so it falls, I think, a little bit on the WooCommerce store owner, I think, to
It's
to plug in some of these.
Yeah, well, if you use WooCommerce and you use WooPayments, that is powered by Stripe as well, just like Shopify, and you
Okay.
automatically get that Radar technology. In fact, we brought somebody over from PayPal over to Stripe because they were having some issues with the PayPal, not just the gateway, but also the plugin they were using,
Yeah.
and it brought their fraud down dramatically. I
Yeah.
think they were, they had a better rate with PayPal, but it ended up paying off because Stripe caught so much more fraud that they were saving about $2,000 a month on
Yeah.
fraudulent activity.
So it
We also had I wanna touch on something else real quick. We had another customer that was forced to use a lower tier payment processor or payment gateway, right? And they had none of these things in place. That there was no way to remediate these attacks.
was it sorry.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Was it like a high profile type product?
Well, it was, it's, they sold weapon what they sell weapon accessories. So, they're
Yeah.
very limited to who they can use because it's a great area, you know? It's one of those,
Yeah.
like, markets where a lot of merchants don't wanna touch it. So, they were forced to use this particular gateway. The reason they found out they were getting card attacks is when they got the bill at the end of the month one time, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. It was a long time ago, and there was nothing that they could do on their end to stop this. The payment gateway basically said, you know, "You're responsible for this. We don't have those tools to do that." So what we ended up doing was really slick. We wrote a custom integration with Sucuri
Yeah.
so that if we saw a repeat amount of calls to the payment processor within more than like 10 seconds, we just block the IP address.
Yeah.
At the Sucuri layer, right? Obviously, the workaround for that is what? You go to a new IP address, right? But again, it just limited it. It limited the attack rate dramatically because after like 3, 5 attempts, blacklist you, so new IP address, and
Yeah.
it was offloading everything to the Sucuri layer too, not not to the WooCommerce layer.
Yeah, one tool we use is patchstack.io for it's like more of a proactive approach versus a security. I like that, because it more of a glorified firewall, for example. And then on top of that, using let's say Cloudflare to do, stop them before they even really get to the site. And that's like through bot traffic and things like that. So another thing that has happened, I think, with let's say customers that are buying things or actually store owners is like promo abuse. So, let's say you run a 10% off for a new customer campaign and someone creates hundreds of fake emails to keep redeeming it. That eats also away from your margin.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to take that into account when you generate a promo, right? That somebody or someone is gonna potentially do this to you. But there are ways to sort of like bulletproof yourself, right? Like, and you see a lot of disclaimers when people do promos, like one one per person, one per household. And I think that would maybe like limit you or somewhat limit you where you can essentially get out of it and cancel all these orders.
Yeah, well, I think let's look at the problem itself. Do you want to know how much of a problem this is? Worldwide, it's kind of
Yeah, yeah.
crazy.
I love to
So,
know that. Yeah.
e-commerce businesses lose 3 to 5% of revenue to promo abuse annually for a 10 million dollar business. That's 300 to 500K in lost revenue or in lost margins.
That's astonishing, man. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, huh?
And then here's another one too. You also have account takeovers. Imagine somebody just taking over your Amazon account where your credit
God,
cards are saved, or not just Amazon, but any e-commerce account.
I need
So
to
that's
tell my
why.
wife to make sure her password's better.
Well, I'm sorry. What's that?
I need to tell my wife to make sure her password's better.
Yeah, or just really force 2FA.
Yeah, true. I have that on mine. I don't know if she does. Good
Yeah,
call.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure like Amazon will like auto prompt you
Add
if.
your phone number or something, at
Yeah,
least.
if you're logging in from a different device for the first time or different location, it'll definitely layer up the security for sure.
Yeah.
But
So I was gonna say some common tactics beyond, this is what fraudsters will do is they'll use virtual credit cards, gift card cycling, and browser fingerprint invasions. So they'll create accounts with slightly different versions of, let's say, an email, John.Smith, +1, +2, +3, +4, at Gmail, and they'll just continue to hit these accounts that way and use residual proxy networks to appear as different geographic customers. So it is really a hard way to catch up with them once it starts.
yeah, I guess you can also limit your promo too to only to the first 1,000 customers or 100 customers, right?
Yeah. So with that, I'm not a big fan of promo code creation on, let's say, let's just give it a WooCommerce website. I don't think some customers don't realize that when they do like those auto generating promo codes, they'll generate 10,000 promo codes
Yeah.
and it kills a database.
Yeah, you can do that quick. Yeah, and it's so funny you bring that up because I always advise all our customers to have promos, but I tell them that hey, factor in a promo code where you're still profitable. Who cares if you're selling more? As long as you remain profitable,
Yeah.
let people use it and let people abuse it all day long. You're just generating more sale.
I don't get the single user promo code either, like generating different ones. I guess there's a certain time to do that, but don't, I never really found a good reason to generate 10,000 promo codes.
I agree. Yeah, there's no I don't know why you do that. You know, the only time we generate or I see customers generate unique ones, it's for a particular customer, they want a credit or they want to give them a gift, and we'll
You're right.
usually attach it to their email address so it's a one-time use.
I think it was like a hack that WooCommerce did for like a membership uh, coupon code or something. Like they had like weird plugins that would do that. I think GIF had one where it would create multiple, coupon codes for a particular customer. Sorry, gift card. That's what it was, which made no sense. It's like create a gift card. Actually, that's a whole that's a whole other topic. I'm not going to jump off from a security standpoint, but that gift cards has always been a hard thing. I think on WooCommerce in general.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, we should probably table that one for another episode. Because I have my love and hate relationship with gift cards, just like about every other technology that I work with. It's always a love hate relationship. But look,
Absolutely.
here's the deal though, and just kind of moving on security. Security isn't just about blocking hackers. It's also about compliance and customer trust. If you're using Shopify or WooCommerce with the right payment gateways, PCI compliance is handled. But ultimately, you're still responsible for being PCI compliant, and more important, you need to handle and manage customer data.
Absolutely. And and with so there's a couple of things. GDPR and CCPA. There's two compliances in this country, but just to touch on the PCA compliance thing, there's I think three or four levels of PCI compliance. And until you're selling, I think over 500,000 a month, you fall in a self-governing level, right? So you're not like you usually can get away with not having to have audits done of your processing and things like that. So, once you get over a certain level, you have to start having more audits and things checked on from a security standpoint. But GDPR, which is the European Union compliance, and that's more for privacy rulings and things like that, as well as CCPA, those compliances, we don't know the level of risk that just yet because it's like they threw it out there that websites have to do this, but I haven't seen, a lot of lawsuits or anything like that yet, but that
That's a good
will
point.
happen sooner or later.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, WooCommerce has that functionality built in, the GDPR and CCPA. So just to clarify, GDPR is strictly for the European Union. So if you're selling products or services in the EU, you got to have a GDPR policy. And part of that GDPR policy is being able to execute what that policy is about. Essentially, a user can reach out to you and say, "Hey, what information do you have about me?" You need to be able to produce that information to them, right? Then they can request that you delete that information. And again, you need to be able to execute that and delete that information from your databases. Same thing for
Yeah.
CCPA. CCPA just happens to be the US version, specifically to California. Right now, I think
Yeah.
only CCPA that's active, right? But there are other states that are following suit there. I think like Colorado and Ohio, maybe.
Oregon, I think,
Is it anyways,
California for
here's
sure.
the bottom line. It is just a matter of time till all the states fall into this GDPR slash CCPA policy. You're gonna have to have it. Again, if you run WooCommerce or you run Shopify, you're good there.
So
If you
what,
run Yeah.
I was gonna say there's a couple tools that like Consent Magic is one that we use as a plugin for WordPress for having that compliance. It's built by the guy that does Pixel Your Site plugin. Flow used to be one, but they were bought out by another tool. What do you use? Like, what are some of the tools that are used in Shopify, for example? Are the same thing, like extensions you could download and add it to your Shopify site so you could have those compliances?
I have no fucking idea, so I'm gonna cut this out.
Okay. All right. Well, hold on.
I've never had to use it on Shopify, so I don't know.
Compliance tools. Cookie bot. Cookie yes. Okay, we'll just say cookie yes. Hold on. Products. Okay, yeah. So here, ready? Ready? So, cookie yes is
Wait,
a.
are you answering your own question?
Do you want to answer it? Yeah,
I
you
mean,
answer it.
you asked me, or I can just cut it out.
So just say, well, actually, just cut it out. I'm gonna.
I'll ask you. I'll ask you. Judd, give us some of the tools that are used in Shopify for GDPR and CCPA compliance.
So with Shopify, it's not really like a plugin, and I think you brought up some good points about you have to be able to provide information back to the customer if they request it. Usually in America, we don't worry about that because this is not as prevalent as it is in Europe. But you might want to go with a third party platform like cookieyes.com. They actually work for WordPress, Wix, Shopify, but the thing is, what's good about this platform is it actually will record the IP address of the person that agreed to the compliance, so the user that agreed to it. So you have a full record of it, which a lot of WordPress plugins that are consent plugins, they just have yes or no, but they don't really store the user's information so you can feed back to them what they agreed on and supply to them what they might ask for, right? So it is kind of like still up in the air, and I would say it's probably like a 0.001% of users that might ask for, hey, what are you storing about me? But it may happen. So you should be ultimately prepared for it in the
Yeah,
future. And I would say large
no,
brands in particular should as well.
not only that, but the EU will fine you.
They'll find, yeah. I don't know how that works though. They can't
I
really,
forgot. It's like on a per day basis. I forgot. This came out so long ago, and we
yeah,
we haven't we haven't really dealt recently with any EU customers. So I don't know what the
yeah,
fines are, but I know when it initially launched, which was years ago, there was like a daily fine in there.
yeah. I don't know how enforceable that is just yet either, particularly for an American company. But I know that if you're a
Yeah,
big brand,
it's
I don't
probably
like small brands they're really going after per se. I'd say bigger brands are the ones that they're going to focus on, and then it's going to trickle down once they figure out how they can grab money from people. Then it will trickle downward.
it's probably just a matter if you like make it down to court,
Yeah,
and if
good
they can
lord.
if they can prove it that hey, I've been asking for this long to get my data deleted and it hasn't happened.
I think people in the '70s still had it way better than we have now. I'm just going to throw it out there. They dealt with cash. They knew everybody at the store. Like there's so much now in running an online business of any sort that you have to start to think about taxes. And so before there was no tax, like for internet sales, now there's tax in like, I don't know, maybe 15 states. So you have to have all those tax nexus or whatever it's called. So there's a lot that you have to consider now when running an online store and be compliant with. So these platforms, I think, are key, but they all add up though, right? So if you're paying
Yeah,
for, a cookie compliance, you're paying for a tax compliance, all these compliances, it just adds the cost of
it
business.
really does. Yeah. Hey, listen, you gotta pay to play, like they say, right?
Yeah, everybody wants their
Oh, by
pound
the
of
way, like
flesh.
there are reasons why these policies
Yeah,
are in, right? And I don't think they're bad reasons, they're good reasons. I mean,
PCI compliance for sure.
PCI compliance is huge, right? When I worked in e-com 20 years ago, I remember when credit cards would get stored in plain text in a database. Like this was a thing. I remember people
Yeah,
collecting credit card numbers
I
via
remember
a
that too.
feedback form that
Yeah,
didn't even have HTTPS on it. Like it was a thing.
I had someone with a WooCommerce site as well as Magento site that literally changed the code so that they could store the card, like you said, not encrypted. Literally, you open up the database table and it's
Oh my
all right
gosh.
there.
That's
And I'm
that's
like,
a
yeah, I
jackpot for
can't.
a hacker. That's
Yeah,
like a
they
gold
asked
mine
me to
for a
host
hacker.
it, and they asked me to host it, and just by chance, I looked at the back end of the site and I saw it. And I'm like, I can't host this, and so that's a good thing to bring up. I think you brought up a great thing that if you start to, if you have your own hosting company, or let's say even reselling your hosting and whatever, it's just you're managing the hosting, you're charging for hosting. You need to consider that when looking at stores that you might bring aboard, if they are compliant, because I think by proxy also have to be PCI compliant as a hosting company.
You do. There are different levels of PCI compliance for hosting. When I was involved in hosting, we started to look into it. And obviously and this is a very different topic now, but the same rules that apply, or the rules that apply to the website aren't necessarily the rules that apply to a data center, right? And here's a good example of that. Your Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There's certain guidelines for PCI compliance on your Wi-Fi. Why? Because it's your internal network. So now what happens if somebody gains access to that Wi-Fi? and all sorts of things like that. And physical
Yeah.
security too, all sorts of stuff like that. I was going to go somewhere else with this. I just wanted to mention to our listeners that if you are on Woo Payments and or if you use Shopify, you don't have to worry about credit cards being stored in your database. It's all technology. It doesn't happen anymore. There
Yeah.
is a method out there that is called tokenization, where a token or a unique number is essentially stored in your database as the credit card. And that is then linked up to the actual credit card on the payment processors or the payment gateway servers. So the credit card is never actually on your store. So you can sleep safe at night. If your site gets hacked, none of your customer credit cards are going to get stolen.
Yeah. Unless you break the site with your own code to store the customer credit card. I mean, because they can do that.
You can do that. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure on the Stripe checkout on a WooCommerce site, the credit card never sees the server.
Yeah, no, that's
It,
totally piece out of
it gets
compliance.
it gets passed to Stripe like right away.
This is where someone would, the reason someone would do this is because they're not using a processor. They're literally getting all the info and then
Right,
manually processing it somewhere,
right, right,
so
right.
but my point going back, store owners are just fine. It's hosting companies that they need to look out for that because if you didn't watch and make sure that that site's doing that, you
Yeah,
could become liable as well.
yeah. Let's move on and talk more about the human side or the user experience side of your customers when they're in your e-commerce website. They're also looking for trust signals, right? And here's a big one today. And I don't know if I'm gonna sound weird when I say this, but COVID just sort of changed all this for us. And that's Apple Pay and Android Pay.
Yeah,
Right now,
yeah,
now more and more people are using these methods. It
yeah.
dramatically reduces checkout friction on your card. I mean, I'm sorry, on your e-commerce website, and it's a trust signal as well for
That's
your
why I like
use.
Stripe has that built in.
It's just so darn easy, right?
Yeah, I love Stripe. I really do. It's probably one of the platforms I continually like. I'm okay with. You know what I
Hey,
mean? Like no
yeah, that's why.
issues.
But I tell people all the time, this is why they own the market. They're just
Yeah.
they're and since day one, they were so like developer favored. They always had an amazing platform to build on.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of like Gmail suites. Like I've never actually sent a support ticket in when I had Gmail suites for 10 years. Never had a problem. Stripe, same thing. I've never had to send in a support ticket. The only time I've ever asked for anything is like, hey, how do I customize this or how do
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
add
We
metadata? And
Same
they
thing with
help
our
that.
yeah, we've never run into any Stripe issues, but we did do an enterprise build out and we had to get involved with their development team.
Yeah.
And at that point, obviously when you're enterprise, you can talk to anybody via any method, whether it's
Yeah.
email or phone. All right, we're gonna move on regarding security. Still on the topic. Just practical security steps for a store owner, an e-commerce store owner, to be specific. First off,
Don't
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
don't pay for cheap hosting.
Don't pay for cheap hosting. You nailed it, man. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Shared hosting, the $10 a month hosting, which is essentially shared, that's a big no-no because potentially your site can get hacked. Much higher chance of it getting hacked. Hosting companies are gonna tell you that, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's because they're all on the same hosting server. So if one site gets hacked, it potentially spread to all of them. And then let's say there's
Correct,
200
correct. And
sites
I mean,
on.
it is somewhat contained, right?
Yeah, it's better. It's definitely better than it used to be. But remember, like some people would have literally in the main folder all the site folders back in the day. No, not now. Now they have their own instances. But do you remember like some people that would be reselling hosting would be
Yeah. In
on
that
their
in that in that case, In that case, yes. Although
yeah,
although at that layer, obviously you're screwed if that layer gets compromised.
yeah,
But more on the website layer, there are permissions in the file system where you can write to another folder.
yeah.
Again, but that's more from the web layer, right? On the server layer, forget it. If
Let's
that's hosting,
so let's give something to a buyer real quick. Like if you're going to get hosted by somebody, one, make sure they're not a reseller, they're a legitimate host. If they're not a legitimate host, that they're a partner, like with Pressable or WordPress.com, for example. Like Pressable, you talked about many times, and I started getting into it as well with Pressable. Great partner to have. They easily, both host sites directly and or for agencies in a very effective way, and it's just a way to go where you're not, maybe going with someone that has a dedicated server and is literally stuffing 100 sites on there, and that's all they have from a hosting perspective. Like, you want to get a real host that
Right,
has
right,
a
and it's not being
and
managed by a professional.
yeah, and I think that still happens. There's many sites that are still out there on old servers, just waiting to die in some way, which will happen sooner or later.
Yeah, yeah, ticking time bombs. Let's look at firewall. Really, in web terms, it's more WAF, UAF, web application firewall,
Yeah.
or CDN service, specifically Cloudflare and Sucuri. Those are my favorite too. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those two? Like your
So security I've used for a long time. There's several that I actually use as well, like Malcare is another one,
It's funny.
and PatchStack.
I just started using Malcare. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, PatchStack's another one. So they're all three doing the same things. I think pricing is different for all three, so it just depends. Like, I like PatchStack from a volume perspective, a great control panel, easy to use. Security started out as a kind of like a Malcare. They're both the same when it comes to being able to scan your site, from a third party service, help you identify things, clean them up, reinstall, backup. So they all grown from just being a scanner, for malware, to adding backups, to all doing all sorts of stuff. So what started as really just a security plugin turned into a full platform security has. So it's, I would say their costs went up over the years, just kept on going up. And you can maybe tell me whether or not if Malcare is better, but I probably prefer Malcare over them just from a cost perspective.
Yeah, so I don't have much experience with Malcare. Like I said, I just started experimenting with them. But here's what I
Yeah.
can tell you: on the speed side, Cloudflare
Oh yeah.
is definitely the winner, right?
So we just totally just left security and Malcare and went right to Cloudflare.
Well, here's the thing that Sucuri has over Cloudflare is the remediation or cleanup.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. That's
Cloudflare
what got
can't
me.
give,
Yeah.
yeah, Cloudflare can't give you that. So
Yeah.
it's we're like a pendulum with some of these customers, right? And it's I tell them like, look, it's better to have both.
Yeah.
One as your remediator, the other one for security and speed, right? I've never had Sucuri not be able to clean up a hacked website. It's never happened. Like, I'm
Yeah.
still
Me
waiting to
either.
give them a hacked website and then come back and say, sorry, we can't help you. And this
Yeah.
goes for not just WordPress, but it goes for ASP.NET applications, Magento. I mean, you name it. You can throw anything you want.
I've had very rarely some smart, but malware that kind of we cleaned up and then it came back. We had to clean up again, and we ended up finding that there was a back door, and we literally got rid of it and then notified them saying, "Hey, this file you guys are not catching," and then they would update or add that to their whole arsenal of stuff. So I think that happened one time out of like
Wow.
10 years of cleaning
Wow.
dozens and dozens of sites up.
I remember I had an old developer. We had a site that was hacked, and he was like dying to get in there and try to figure it out. And I'm like, hey, don't even try. I'm like, it's thousands and thousands of lines of code. Don't even
Yeah.
try. I'm like, let Sokori handle it, and then you take something away from the feedback they gave you. Because
Yeah.
sometimes they can tell you where it might have happened. Most of the times they can't tell you where it happened, and customers will ask,
Yeah.
how did it happen? Like, hey, it's hard to say. I mean, sometimes you can tell because somebody has a dumb password or somebody has a
Yeah.
plugin that's way, way outdated, that has vulnerabilities.
You brought up a great point. We talked about this before. If you're a person that has weak passwords and your site continually gets hacked, but your developer or hosting company says, look, there's no viruses on the machine, that could possibly mean that someone has your actual password, and you
Yes, that
must
could happen
set
too. Yeah, yeah. In fact, Sukori will tell you in every remediation, like cycle all your passwords. And
all of them.
what's the other one they tell you to cycle? Is the hash keys on WordPress?
Hash keys as well. Also change your login URL. So don't have it /WP-admin, for
I gotta
example.
tell you, I think that's really silly, personally, that people
Yeah.
change. And I will tell you why. It's the same endpoint as the login for customers.
Well, you can change that though for customers as well. You can
But
create
but
a
but it still
custom
has to be
login page.
exposed. You still have to expose it.
You do, but I think from an admin perspective, you're able to change that BP-admin to something else. But I see what you're saying. Like, once they log in, it has that in there. But I guess that's
You can go
yeah,
to the customer portal login window, type in admin credentials, and you're still gonna see your backend admin.
Yeah, you will, but I guess it's just a deterrent of someone trying to see if it's WordPress. But at the end of the day, they
Oh
know.
my god, tell me again,
They'll
was
scrape the bat, they'll
all you
scrape
have
the
to
actual
do is
source code, and they'll find out.
yeah,
So yeah, you're right.
all
Don't.
you have to do is look at the source code and seal the WP admin files. And by the way, there's a plugin out there, and I haven't used it in years, that hides all that, right? But it still leaves, or at the time it did, I don't know if it does it now, it still leaves a telltale that it's WordPress
I
and
think
it's
it's
the
called,
correct.
WPMU dev Brenda.
I think it's like
I think it's
WP
called
hide.
Brenda.
WP hide, I think. But
Yeah.
ultimately what it does is the way you can tell it's still WordPress is of how the images are stored.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
You still have
the
the
source
WP
code
admin slash
yeah,
I'm
the
sorry.
source code in general, though, is gonna have so many telltales. Like, it's very hard to really hide a, WordPress. Like, someone's gonna
So
know.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of times customers request it. I just tell them like, hey, like, you're moving the door in your house from the front to the side. You still have a door.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I think let's go to the next segment, which is balancing security with the UX. So I think this is really going to be for I think an e-commerce site or even like a sign up site or some sort of subscription site where if you have any too many security checks, kind of going through the back end, it could deter a potential buyer. And I think we brought up having Stripe Connect, where it just makes it easy to use Apple Pay, Stripe, because I have literally, I think it's always on Stripe, but I know for the most part, it's Shopify sites where it's like, okay, I buy something, it texts me the code, I
Yeah.
put the code in, and I
Yeah.
check out.
That's a good point. That's actually done through the shop feature, which is Shopify's
Yeah, shop. Yeah, yeah,
Shop Pay, right? I don't know if you noticed, but Stripe now has that same feature. It's called Link, and it's
yeah,
really,
same
really
thing.
slick. What it does is, and it does it just like Shopify. They did an amazing job, I must say, doing this because I thought
Yeah,
Shopify's version was genius. But essentially, what it does, and I'm talking about Link, is the minute you put in your email address on checkout, it automatically recognizes that you have a Link account, and it'll prompt you to say, "Hey, do you want to pay with Link?" And if you say yes, it sends you a text. You put in that 2FA code, and you can check out. I think what you're talking
yeah,
about though, in terms of like user experience, and sadly some merchants do this, and I try to stay away from it, or I advise our customers not to do it, specifically on checkout, and that is putting
yeah.
something in like CAPTCHA. Sometimes you'll see CAPTCHA or reCAPTCHA
Yeah.
on checkouts, right? And that's kind of like where that UX component, you're trying to lock down your store too much, and it's preventing people from actually checking out.
So, I think, and I read a statistic that I think your abandon rate goes up by like 27% when you add things like that, CAPTCHA or invisible checks that might take a long time. So, load time, things that happen in the process, like checks, CHEX is like a tool that does security. Invisible security stuff, but what happens is it might take an extra 3 seconds to get from the shopping cart page to the checkout page, and just that time alone could actually hurt your conversion. So you got to be careful on how much you overdo it because you might really affect your conversion rate optimization at that point.
Yeah. There's also if we're talking about the UX aspect of it, there is invisible, what I like to call invisible security for the customer, right? And that's more like fraud scoring. And now, now we're getting more into did somebody place a fraudulent order on my website? You should have tools. So what's the one that WooCommerce has? Shopify has it built in, but WooCommerce also has it. And it
Built in, or is it like you're talking
no,
about?
no, no. You have to get it as an add-on. I just forgot the name of the plugin.
I know that. So a GIF has one. It's a security check. On trying to think of the name of it.
Yeah, it's called anti-fraud for WooCommerce, and
Yes.
yeah, and what it does is Shopify works the same way. It looks at different variables on an order. It looks at things like what email address was used, how much was ordered in terms of total quantity, what the shipping method was, where the IP address was. So it looks at all these different factors, and then it gives you a score that's relative to potential fraud. You can choose to contact the customer as a store owner and say, hey, did you buy XYZ? Can you send us a copy of your driver's license, or can you just take a picture of the credit card? Maybe hide the numbers with your fingers. There's all sorts of things you can do to minimize these fraud orders, right? Um,
Yeah.
I haven't. It's funny. I used to hear about this more, but I haven't heard about it recently. Have you
So I
you deal with that at all still?
so I do. We have a rare book site that we manage, and they get quite often all the attacks that we literally talked about earlier, where people are trying to order stuff. They've actually had people order and pay, and it was a substantial amount, and then lost. So they had to fight with the credit card company to get back the money. So it definitely happens to them. We used several tools. WooCommerce Anti-Fraud, it was the one that's a plugin, but there is Signified for WooCommerce.
I think it's called Signify, and it's not just
Oh,
WooCommerce.
thank you. Gosh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
butchered
yeah.
that name. I'm sorry about
And that's
that. But
and by the way, that falls under, like, the cyber insurance category.
because do they guarantee like something happens, they pay
Yeah,
you
we
back?
actually we had to use them for a customer a while back.
Okay, cool.
It was a customer that sold, like high-end, watches, like luxury watches. So these transactions were like 20, 50, sometimes 100 grand,
Oh
and
Lord.
Signify would protect them against a possible fraud. Think about it, man.
I you
Somebody
know
buys
what?
a
I'm
hundred
gonna have
thousand
to sorry, go ahead.
somebody buys $100,000 Patek Philippe, you better be darn sure it's a legit transaction because 'cause you're out 100 grand in
Yeah.
one a single transaction, you know?
Yeah, I have to check into that for my rare books client because they'll sell up to $500,000 books. It's
Holy moly.
crazy. Yeah, it's nuts how much some of the transactions that go through. But there's the other ones too, like Fraud Labs Pro or WooCommerce has an official one called WooCommerce Anti-Fraud. But I think with plugins, particularly if you have an issue, it's like a deterrent. But like once a hacker, knows that they can get through on your site, they will continue to attack your
Yeah,
site, and that's where
you
you
gotta
really need to
identify
look at
what's
third party
happening.
platform. Yeah.
You gotta
Sorry, go ahead.
identify what's happening and cut them off. You're right. They'll keep doing it.
They'll keep doing it, and that's where you might have to upgrade to, yeah, a third-party platform that's, a little more, beefed up. It's going from a bouncer to a full-on, spec ops,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
military grade.
And also, like, I can't stress enough how important 2FA is.
Oh, that
Even though
stops them in their tracks.
yeah, and
Yeah,
by the way, 2FA isn't bulletproof by any means. What do they call it? The middle in the man attack that you can use with 2FA?
yeah,
There's there's
yeah,
there's that, right? I mean, the chances of that happening are slim, right?
yeah,
But it isn't 100% is what I'm saying. But again, it's just protects you in a very, very big way. It's like getting in your car and not putting a seatbelt on is what not
yeah.
having 2FA is, I feel like, or not having airbags. I want to make a comment too, is that passwords, weak passwords. No,
That's always an issue.
always.
You can actually force that. I think most platforms are
Most
forcing
A lot of
stronger pass.
platforms do doing that.
They're done
Somehow
with it. They're
somehow
like,
people still get around it though. You find the silliest password sometimes.
"Admin one,
Um,
2,
yeah, and 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute, that's my password.
yeah."
Like, what was it? What's that movie? That space movie? That's a comedy.
Oh god, like, really? Like, there's so many.
No, it's like a Star Wars spoof.
Oh, Spaceballs.
Spaceballs, yeah, it's Spaceballs where he's like, "Give me the code to the
Eh,
planet to open up the
you can
window."
ask me movies, at least older ones, I'll know.
Yeah, no, but anyway, remember they're trying to suck all the air out of planet Earth, and the guy's like, "Give me the password," and he's like, "It's 1, 2, 3, 4." He's like, "Wait a minute, that's my password."
Yeah. So they're making a part 2.
No, are you
Spaceball
real? Oh, we can
yeah,
go see that. I
I
can't
read
wait.
that somewhere. Spaceballs 2.
I cannot wait. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
he's still alive. What's his name?
What is it? Is it Mel something?
Yeah, Mel, Blazing Saddles. Holy cow, I can't believe I got his last name. I'm on a 2-minute warning here.
Here's a good thing. Here's a good thing about passwords though, and we'll wrap this up afterwards. Passwords are going away.
Oh, yeah.
What you're starting to see now is a new technology called passkeys, which still uses a password, but the user never sees it, right?
Yeah.
That passkey is usually interfaced or intertwined with some kind of biometric device or a third-party hardware
Yeah, I
device.
use it constantly now. It's so easy for me to
If
log in. I don't remember anything. It's
Yeah,
just
if they have it,
basically
I
to my
yeah,
device.
no doubt. If they have it, I use it for sure. It was
Yeah.
a little tricky getting it set up at first and getting used to it, but now it's like a no-brainer.
All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up what we've gone through. Do we have any last minute words here?
Well, I mean, I guess if anybody's listening out there, I'm going to throw a challenge out there, and that is start with a 2FA update. If you're not using two-factor authentication, get it done today.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess that's a wrap for episode 16, Judd.
All right.